Guys, it's Karalynn and welcome back to the podcast. Today I want to talk about a topic that I always get a lot of questions on. Termination for convenience clause. And so we're going to talk about this in two different perspectives. Commercial contracts and residential contracts, because legally they're two different things. So let's talk about termination for convenience clause and commercial construction contracts and what they mean and how they work. So a termination for convenience clause allows the general contractor or whoever hired you to terminate you for no reason or any reason at all with very little notice, right? They basically send you a notice saying you're terminated and they don't have to give a reason. And why this is done is because the only way you can get out of a contract or terminate it is if a party is in default or they don't do something required by the contract. So this gives the general contractor or the owner a way out, even if you're doing everything you're supposed to, right? So some things to know about this is once you sign the contract, you're on the hook to do the work. So you don't have the same right. So once you sign that contract, you cannot terminate for convenience. So one of the things I recommend as a negotiation tool is that they're usually not willing to take it out, but most times I can get it to be made mutual, where you have the right to terminate the contract as well. Meaning you can get out of the contract for any reason or no reason at all and not be in breach, right? So making it mutual. Some of the effects of a termination for convenience clause. First off, they're normally used, and I say this, but in most cases they're used before you actually start doing the work. And here's what happens is that you submit a bid, you sign the subcontract, you're all ready to go, and then the GC finds somebody cheaper and they terminate you for no reason. And really at that point, there's nothing you can do. You're not entitled to get any of the money that you would have made. You're not entitled. You might be entitled for some of the prep work you did, depending on what the contract says. It just gives them a way out and an easy way to say, hey, we no longer want to use you. You're excused from this project, and lets them move on with using somebody else. It can happen in the middle of a project as well. Usually you're entitled to be paid for the work that you did, but here's why getting terminated either for cause or convenience is not a good idea. If you're terminated, most people think that they're just walking away from what they're owed, but that's not the truth. You are walking away from what you're owed, but you're also on the hook for the difference, right? So like say you get terminated on a project and the general contractor hires somebody to replace you, and the replacement contractor costs $10,000 more than you would have, right? So now you're on the hook for that $10,000. So it's not just as easy as walking away from the money that you're owed. You could be on the hook for more. So in most situations in commercial contracts, I really try to tell you at all costs, don't get fired, don't get terminated, don't walk the job, because the ramifications are much bigger than you actually think, right? Another way that the termination for convenience clause works is if somebody's terminating you for cause, like say you weren't manning the job enough and they didn't give you the proper notice because the contract requires 48-hour notice. And if they don't give you that notice before they terminate you, then they're in breach of the contract. So say they mess up the notice. So that would just say, instead of terminating for cause, I terminate you for convenience. So it gives them a way out of the contract no matter what. So I say that, so number one, that you know what it means and how that it works, and how you can best protect yourself is asking for you to have those same provisions. Like basically after you sign the contract, if you don't want to do the work anymore, you can say you want to terminate for convenience and no longer have to do the project and not be in breach of the contract, right? So commercial is kind of different in the fact that this is a provision that heavily favors the owner or the general, whoever hired you. And knowing what it means and how it works so you can protect yourself. Don't be wrong, if you're terminated, you can always file a lien for the work that you're owed money for. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on what the replacement contractor looks like, if you are owed any money or not at the end of the day. So for my residential contractors, I tell my residential contractors to build in a termination for convenience clause for them. What I like to call it, and I have a book on a chapter in my new book, Trust Your Gut, is an escape clause, right? It's a provision that allows you to exit the contract for any reason or no reason at all, right? So it basically says contractor can terminate this contract for any reason, no reason at all within 48 hours notice. And where this becomes highly beneficial, there's a couple of ways, right? First off, if you've gotten to a project where you just can't deal with somebody, they've become over demanding, just are not easy to work with, keep asking for extras and not willing to pay for it, this gives you a way out without breaching the contract. You can say, hey, this is just not working out. I can't move forward with this project. Under the contract, I can terminate. You'll pay me for the work that I did, and you'll go on about hiring somebody else to finish the work. It leaves you a legal way out of the contract without breaching it if something goes wrong, right? Another way an escape clause can be used is a negotiation tool. So, right, I've dealt with several contractors over the year who did a project and didn't properly price something or miss something in the scope of work. And so they're going through and they're like, get to this part and like, oh shit, I didn't write this into my contract. And so what it allows you to do is go back to the homeowner and say, hey, when I was bidding the work, I missed this part and it's going to cost $20,000. And so here's where I'm at. I can terminate this contract because it doesn't work for me, or we can negotiate a price so I can move forward. So it can also be used as a negotiation tool to get things you may have missed, or like if you don't have a price escalation clause in your contract, like and material prices go up 5 or 6%. You be, hey guys, when we signed the contract, here was the price of materials. They've gone up substantially. I can't move forward with this contract. I'll have to terminate it. I'll have to use the escape clause and exit the contract unless you want to pay me the difference, right? It gives you the option not to be. So if you sign a contract and you didn't have a price escalation clause or an escape clause and material prices went through the roof, it's not going to matter. You're going to be on the hook to do that work for that same price. So it builds in some kind of protections, right? And so the escape clause gives you a way out. At the same time, I want to talk about the homeowner side and not giving them an escape clause, but giving them a cancellation clause. So if you build into your contract that says, hey, if you cancel this contract before work starts, I get to keep the deposit. Or if you cancel this contract during the middle of work, here's how much I get. It's very helpful for a couple of reasons. First, it puts the homeowner on notice that if they do cancel the contract, it's going to cost them something. Not everybody recognizes that once they sign that document, it is legally binding and they are obligated to move forward with it, right? And so if they cancel, you are entitled to damages, right? And what those damages would be is the profit that you would have made on the job, which sounds great, except for if we don't have a cancellation clause built in, it becomes really hard to prove what that number was. So I'd send a demand letter out, somebody terminated ended the contract with you wrongfully. You're going to send a demand letter out for the profit that you're owed. Number one, I'm just going to put it on paper. Or later on down the line, we're going to have to prove how we got there. We're going to have to pull other projects you did and show this is the profit margin that you've made. If you build in a cancellation clause, the fee is set. We know what it is. It's either the deposit or a certain percentage based on when they cancel. So it protects you that if they do cancel, you'll get something, and it's easier to get. And number two, it makes them realize that once they sign this document, there is a penalty if they cancel, and they take it seriously. Because like I said, if they go ahead and terminate you and hire somebody cheaper, yes, you have a cause of action to sue them, but it's a much more difficult case if we don't have written in the contract the amount that they're liable to pay. So guys, I hope these tips were helpful. Feel free to reach out to me on social media or at the Cromeens Law Firm if you have any other questions. Thanks.